Good morning and welcome to the Rabin Report. I'm your host, Elliot Rabin, so get ready to get triggered. Good morning and welcome to the Rabin Report. I'm your host, Elliot Rabin, as you might have heard in our intro. And with me, I have my expert panel, as always, Marshall, Adam, and Daniel. How are you guys?
Doing
Good.
Doing good.
Awesome, good to hear. So, to our main story now. Today, we're changing our topic once again last minute. We were supposed to discuss the very light topic of abortion, but due to the recent...
Let us know.
Well, we'll save it for another show, but due to the recent passing of Bill C-16 by the Canadian government, we're going to be discussing the bill and transgender rights. So, the bill's real purpose is, and I quote, "For all purposes of this act, the prohibited grounds of discrimination are race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, marital status, family status, disability, conviction for an offense for which a pardon has been granted, or in respect of which a record suspension has been ordered." It's simply the Human Rights Act with the added section of non-discriminatory remarks based on gender identity and expression. But in reality, many consider this as not calling somebody by their preferred pronouns. Basically, you go to jail for it because it'll be considered a hate crime. So let's just get right into the questions. First one, can you guys give our viewers a bit more detail on the bill itself?
Well, basically, it's a amendature. I'm not sure if an amendment. I apologize to the Human Rights Code and to the
criminal code.
To the criminal code. Yes, and it does not affect the Constitution, as just to make that clear. So it would make your gender identity a protected class. It would ensure, and I think the intentions are good. It would ensure that employers don't fire people based on their gender identity. It would ensure that it is correctly labeled a hate crime when somebody is, for example, killed for being a transgender person or assaulted for being a transgender person or whatnot. Then there are some issues that I take with it. I think that in essence it's an alright idea. How it plays out, not so much.
Alright, Adam, Daniel?
You can go ahead, Adam.
For me, the bill is sort of coming along with the changing times. The transgender populace and the non-gender binary populace are gaining more and more recognition. There is movement, which I'm not sure if it passed, but there is movement in the Canadian Parliament to make O Canada gender neutral.
Yeah, it passed, yeah.
Oh, that passed. Their presence at Pride is growing larger and larger in size. Their presence on social media growing larger and larger in size. Discrimination against their populace and against their people is becoming more and more out in the media. And I think this is just a further protection method to the sanctity of transgender and non-binary folk, because for a long period of time, they were not included at all, and I think this is the sort of first big step towards trans and non-gender binary inclusion. So I think that this bill has the potential to produce a lot of good, but it also has the potential to produce some bad, and I think we'll talk about that later on.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, you want to weigh in here?
I think like Mark already said how it was going to change. You're going to make an amendment for the criminal code and the human rights code. I feel like it's, and Adam also touched upon how it can do good. I think like the problem is that people are maybe like over-analyzing it in a sense. How some people, an example from the right, they could say that it's almost like criminalizing the fact that if you incorrectly use somebody's pronouns, stuff like that. And this whole like issue is just a very complicated issue that like we can't, that like it's just up for lots of discussion and deliberation. And there's not going to be like 100% like a clear-cut answer to how, in terms of the effectiveness of this bill. And so like I feel like the whole reason why the bill like should be like, enacted for the purpose of respecting transgender rights and stuff like that. So I think one of the videos we saw from before, I think everybody here has seen it, with one lady who's recording Professor Peterson from the University of Toronto, and they're discussing Bill C-16, where how one of the main ideas for the transgender community is to protect them for housing rights and for just anti-discrimination rights, and that's very like a noble cause for the bill. But since the bill like isn't like, well, no bill will be perfect, but since there's lots of like irregularities and I'm trying to look for the word. Yeah, I would say
Discrepancies?
Yeah, discrepancies and just like if it's too broad sometimes. Sorry, the broadness of the bill causes some people to overreact and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on that note, or are we just okay? Okay. So, what we kind of touched on this right now, but what does this mean for the transgender community? We said they're going to be more included, but is there more to that? Are they going to be as talked about? Are they going to be more represented in the media, for example, like in TV, movies, all that? What is this bill? How will this bill benefit the transgender community?
Well, in looking at the transgender community as a whole, I'd say it's a positive thing. However, I don't like to look at any community as a whole. I've always had a problem with, my biggest problem with the left is the grouping of people into homogenous groups like that. Because I think maybe the average transgender person it will benefit, but that's just not how you can fully categorize somebody. You know, somebody's not just transgender, nothing else. These people are business owners, they're teachers, professors, whatever. They're, they want their own rights to be protected and their own sovereignty to be guaranteed. For the transgender aspect of those people, sure, it might be good in that regard, but I don't think you can look at transgenders as one homogenous hive mind.
Yeah, I agree with Marshall in that regard, but with Parliament and with laws coming into force and with legislation of any kind, you almost have to kind of take what you can get, in a sense. These bills, they go through advanced screenings, they go through parliamentary sessions, they go through discussions. Like this is with anything. This is just an example of it. Like the bill may not be perfect. It may, my biggest worry with the bill is that it may increase sensitivity, like as if though, folk that identify with a non-gender binary or trans folk will almost be waiting for cis people to mispronounce their pronouns or misuse their pronouns and then file them for a hate crime, but I can't prove that in any sense. I think that this is a good step forward for the trans community and for the non-gender binary community, because it's regardless of if the legislation will work, if it will have the full effect that it's intended to, it's bringing their community into light. And whether or not you want to recognize them as a homogenous group, they are a community. Because as much as these people are business owners and parents and all these different sort of categories you can put them into, you can also put them into this category of non-gender binary and trans. And imagine being silent for decades. Imagine being recognized as a mental disease for decades. It's hard as a particularly cis white person, to sort of put myself in their shoes, and to sort of see this bill come out where Parliament talked about them for weeks on end. To see the discussion come into light is a very sort of moving thing. So I think that it's all good in a sense.
No, I just want to add something just to clear up for people who are unclear. Cisgender, or cis, as we'll probably refer to it for the most of the show, means that you are your gender identity conforms with your biological sex. So you are not transgender, you are cisgender. That's just what it means for those who haven't heard the term before.
Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified. Thanks, Marshall.
You're welcome.
So on that note, you talked about gender identity and biological gender. This is going to be a very, very controversial question I'm about to ask. How many genders are there, and is gender a social construct? People always, from what I've seen, people always confuse biological gender with gender identity, and so how many biological genders are there, and what type of, is gender a social construct? Is it a biological construct?
Oh,
And what do you say to people who mix the two up and put it together?
wait, say it again in terms of biological gender.
So, is gender a social construct or a biological thing? Because Marshall touched on gender identity, and many people always put gender identity and biological gender in the same category. What do you think of that?
Well, I'd like to actually, in terms of for this discussion, I'd like to relate it to one of the classes I'm taking right now, actually, and it's kind of similar. We're not necessarily talking about trans issues and stuff like that, but one issue is we're discussing the philosopher Cicero, and she's born from the 30s and stuff like that. She's part of the second wave feminist group and stuff like that. The point being is that she is describing and discussing how there is a preconceived notion between the genders, and this generally accepted this preconceived notion of masculinity and femininity, in terms of how boys are just going to behave a certain way, and how girls are going to behave a certain way, and how we shouldn't necessarily be thinking like that anymore, because it kind of limits us itself as a human, in humanity. And some points I do agree with, some points I don't. Particularly saying is one thing that I personally brought up in the class is we cannot disregard the significance of the biological characteristics of of us. So an example, something that it was debated upon in the class, how an example for boys and men, we have an increased level of testosterone, which does make us necessarily in terms of being able to produce more muscle and stuff like that, with more muscle mass and stuff like that. If you look at me, I'm a scrawny guy, but that's just because I don't lift.
No.
That's not the point though. The point being is that we there's
Can't just disregard.
but the thing is that girls are viewed as more caring and kind and more compassionate and stuff like that, and men are seen to be can see in a more rational sense, and they're more aggressive and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so in terms of relating that now to gender identity and stuff like that, it's tough to being able to use your natural characteristics of your assigned gender, and then being able to confuse that with your gender identity and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it, but I feel there is a difference, and there is a confusing.
It's important.
Yeah, it's important. It's important to realize.
You can't just disregard the difference.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and I think that's one of the main issues when people say, well, boys won't be boys or girls won't be girls. Well, genetically speaking, biologically speaking, they have certain characteristics about them. Would you say that what they do has been socially constructed, a lot of what they do, or is it just biological?
So, yeah, it's a social construct based on biology. I'd say that there are certain things that come with being male and come with being female. There's different hormones that affect behavior and psychology in all sorts of different ways. It is true that males are more aggressive, males are stronger, and this is, of course, just generalizations, but typically males are more aggressive and stronger. And females are, they give birth, obviously, and they are equipped with the tools to care for a baby.
The tools.
So biological gender absolutely influences, or biological sex rather absolutely influences gender, and just because it's a social construct, people use social construct like it's this dirty word.
Yeah.
Virginity is a social construct and stuff like that.
Time is a social construct.
Yeah.
All sorts of things are social constructs. Humans are social animals. That just comes with being a social animal. These constructs. We wouldn't be as social animals without these constructs. As quantifying it, there's two biological sexes. You could say that there's intersex. I think it's hard to say that that's another sex.
Would you consider that like a hermaphrodite or?
Well, intersex,
like,
hermaphrodite. I'm not sure if that's like a PC term anymore.
I don't know. I'm not saying it offensively.
I know you aren't.
But like, just
we can just say like in a term like to describe them like somebody who has both different types of genitalia.
I would say hermaphrodite is a very harsh word.
Yeah, like intersex
it doesn't sound very good.
But intersex is like the more like accepted term. But either way,
so
I don't think intersex is like its own sex. It's a condition. And again, when I say condition, people act like I'm insulting people who are intersex. No, it's just like
androgyny.
No, that's just like, that's a social thing.
Okay, because I just literally just Googled hermaphrodite and look for synonyms.
Androgynous means that you are a woman, basically, that identifies as a man.
Okay. Well, that's just like, it's aesthetic though.
Yeah.
It's all like, you could still identify as a woman, but like aesthetically.
I guess technically we can use intersex maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, it sounds like a less triggering word, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's a condition. It's not its own thing, and I'm sorry, like, I know that sounds terrible. I'm not trying to insult the people who are afflicted by being born with both sets of genitals, but like, it's a condition.
And that's one thing to note. Facts, as again Ben Shapiro said, this facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, it's just like
it's like you were born male with male parts, and that's a fact. Somebody continue.
I was born with a condition called clubfoot. My feet were like backwards when I was born. It's like, that's just the same thing. But for some reason, when it becomes about genitals, it's all of a sudden this terrible thing to say that it's a condition to be born with both sets of genitals. Like, no, it is. You're not supposed to have both sets of genitals. You can live a normal life with it, but relatively speaking at least, but it's not like supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Adam, were you going to say anything? Or no?
Let's move on to the next question.
Just to move away from that. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, a psychology professor at UotT, started a major movement about Bill 16, and he was actively trying to reject it. And he recently held a debate about it. Did you guys want to mention briefly some key points about the debate?
Well, I didn't watch all of it. It was an hour and 20 minutes,
and we have live.
I watched all your videos, Mr. Peterson. I watched all 500 hours of your content.
I watched the first 20 minutes. I'll give you that, Mr. Peterson, if you're listening.
He's worth 20 minutes of your time.
You know what? Sure. He had this whole he went off on a tangent, and he looked very impassioned in his tangent. He went off at the beginning, and he started to talk about how we're all idiots. Every single one of us, we're all idiots, and the goal of to correct ourselves as idiots is to hear opinions of other people, and all of a sudden become enlightened and see that, maybe we're not, hear the opinion from the other idiot, and then become an enlightened idiot. And he started to talk about how when he brought this idea to light, because it started out very quietly, that he just he wasn't willing to use the proper pronouns of one of his students or a few of his students. And in that sort of protest, he decided that he would invite a conversation to be had. Because we've sort of accepted this idea. It's like, okay, now we have to use everybody's pronoun that they identify with, but nobody talked about it. So he's like, you know what? I want to have a conversation about this. I want to have a talk about this. Then what happened was the protests, gluing his door shut, or Lauren Southern from the Rebel getting beaten. There was so much hate.
You mean that guy just like slapped her or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, that person's probably transgender, so
that
I think he was
probably slapped her. There was so much hate brewed from both the left and the right that just started from the idea of having a conversation, and he kind of brought that back in the debate. He's like, guys, WTF? Like, all I wanted to do was have a talk about this, and this sort of went off into this whole thing, and his career was almost jeopardized. Well, it was jeopardized. He almost lost his career.
He wasn't scared, though. He said that he wasn't scared about losing his job, which is important.
But he talked about how it was a fact that he almost did.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not.
I just want to point something out. Like, I was just like doing some Googles about like C16, and the University of Toronto actually has like this full-on like article talking about Bill 16, how like it's not going to criminalize pronoun use. But it's fully denouncing right here. He is wrong. Like whatever Jordan Peterson's saying is wrong.
Yeah, we can clear up some stuff about that after.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It is very hard for the left and the right, especially the regressive factions of either side, to be able to sort of swallow their pride for about 15 minutes and have a conversation. Because conversation is key to removing bias or lessening bias. I don't think you can completely remove bias. Lessening bias and ignorance. And I think that a conversation needs to be had about what is going to happen about this. Because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Like, I don't identify as a non-gender binary or trans. I'm not part of this group affected. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for the trans? I'd like to know. And I know that I can do my own research, but it's much easier when we have a conversation going that you can pick up on and see what's happening instead of reading the sort of very bland text in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about it? Discussions are the best way to learn.
For sure.
For me.
And, I think a lot of that is why you can't just be, like, on the right like myself and just fully agree with the right wing. You can't just be on the left and say, I'm taking this side because I'm on the left. Because, listen, you both suck. You're both awful.
Yeah, as Jordan Peterson said, you're all idiots.
And, yeah, and, like, I think there are certain aspects where both need to, like Adam said, swallow their pride and come together and debate and realize that, your side is not absolutely right about everything, and neither is mine, and neither is anybody's. There are certain issues that are simply ideological that I know my opinions are not fact. That's just how I feel, and that will not change, and I acknowledge that other people have different opinions, and that's okay, just because, we hold different things to different levels of importance, and that's how things will always be. For example, with this, I hold free speech in very high importance, and that's why I take issue with this, but some people don't hold it in such high importance, and although I disagree, that's fine, like, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
So, just to continue on to that, since you're talking about free speech, is this bill the end of free speech? Is it becoming the end?
That's an exaggeration.
That's why I'm asking.
That
That's why
is
I'm
an
asking,
exaggeration,
because
though.
people have said that. So I'm asking, is it?
Well,
or is it not?
No,
Is it a
that's-
step
no,
there?
no, no.
Is it doesn't matter?
that's a very strong way to put it, but
Yeah.
is it a step towards eliminating? Well,
I don't know.
actually, you know
Like,
what?
I
Sorry.
personally don't know. That's why I'm asking you guys.
Free
So-
speech has not been a thing in Canada for a long time. So, is it the end? I don't know. I think the end was a long time ago. Is it just a step in the wrong direction? Yeah, I think so, at least. I think that there are, like I said, things I like about this law, things I really, really don't like about this law, and I think even worse than saying you can't say something is saying you have to say something. That's Orwellian to me. Saying
I agree.
you don't have, like, I'm fine, like, with hate speech laws. I don't like hate speech laws at all. Not because I want to be able to, like, hate.
Marshall supports hate speech.
Yeah, no, I want
Heard it here
I'm
first.
kidding.
I want other people to have the right to, because that's just, I think that's what holds a liberal democracy together. With this, it's, for me personally, if somebody wants to go by, let's say, they look male, but they want me to call them she or her, I'll do it out of respect. I don't want the law to tell me I have to, but I'll do it out of respect.
Yeah.
If they want me to call them they or them, I'll do it begrudgingly, but I'll do it. If you want me to call you Z or sure or like
Zer or Zem.
something like that, no, I will not call you Z. I will not call you any of those silly made-up pronouns, because that's just.
Got this one
Oh,
right here.
okay. Can you read
There's
some of
a,
those?
there's a,
Yeah, so basically,
Wow.
like, it's this little, I got this from transstudent.org, so the Trans Student Educational Resources, so it seems like it might
So
be
right from the
pretty-
horse's mouth.
Yeah, and basically it's like, it's showing how, like, obviously, like, we all know, like, in the English language, we have subjective, objective, possessive, and reflexive in terms of, like, possessive gender pronouns. So we, instead of using she or he, or they, you'd use Z. Instead of her, him, or them, you'd use zer. Instead of hers, his, or theirs, you'd use zers. And instead of herself, himself, or themself, you'd use zerself. And so in a sentence, Z is
Zerself?
speaking, I listen to zer, and the backpack is zers. Now, it doesn't, like, it just, like, it sounds silly, but if realistically, if the transgender is really gonna be, like, super upfront about this, like, we want to use this, I don't feel like I should be compelled, like, the problem with being compelled to is like if I'm compelled to, I don't want to like me being able to if I disagree with it, I shouldn't be considered that I'm spewing hate speech or stuff like that, or I'm spewing a hate crime or stuff like that. I was also looking at another thing right here where it says free speech is limited under the criminal code for instances where speech is deemed to encourage hatred. This means a conviction can mean up to 2 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, okay, we'll use the transgender thing. Let's say I don't agree with these pronouns. Like Marshall, you don't agree with them, right? To a certain degree.
Well, yeah, like there's just like the made up ones.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the problem with them is that they're not technically like recognized by a dictionary and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And if I don't agree with it, it doesn't mean I should be able to be persecuted and like processed by the court system in order to serve jail time just because I don't agree with something and stuff like that. Like that's, I think, like
Yeah, and I just want to clear up a misconception,
democratic.
and this is a misconception I held for a long time. Under Bill C-16, you will not go to jail for misgendering somebody. It is grounds for a lawsuit, but you will not go to jail. Well, you'll go to jail if you like start spewing hate about whatever, like
Which you
gender
should.
identities.
yeah. But that's like
However,
if you say hate speech about anybody though.
hate speech is I don't like the way it's defined because true statements can be hate speech. I'm worried, like what if I say something like post-op, I know post-op isn't PC, but just for the sake of what I'm saying now, post-op transgender people have a much higher rate of suicide. It's a fact. I don't think I should be able to be persecuted for saying that. Will I? I don't know. Maybe.
For bringing up statistics and stuff like that. Like,
Because
yeah,
true statements can be hate
Yeah.
speech.
that's a
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
I guess.
For me, relating it back to what we earlier talked about, free speech. I agree with Marshall. Free speech is dead. I think that with the birth of the tech age and the World Wide Web, everything that you say can be taken out of context with this new wave of clickbait articling.
And
Somebody's gonna get pissed off, no matter what.
Somebody is gonna get pissed off. Somebody. There is gonna be one person that's gonna get mad, and then I'm gonna get crap for it. Like, there's always one article I see every freaking Christmas about one guy in the office getting upset that somebody has a Christmas tree, and then a whole thing starts. Should we call it Christmas? Should we call it Happy Holidays? What about people that don't celebrate the holidays? What about the atheists? What about the flying? What about the flying spaghetti monster people? What about them? Like, it's there. Somebody is gonna get mad when the Canadian government criminalized, or not the Canadian government, when the American government and when the New York government criminalized boycotting Israel. The New York government, under Andrew Cuomo, created a blacklist for all companies that boycott Israel. And if you publicly boycott Israel, you lose all government funding. That is an impediment on free speech. Whether or not you are pro-Israel, it is an impediment on free speech. When you're not allowed to, when things are removed off your Facebook, if you're going against some sort of group and government, if your Facebook is disabled, that's an impediment on free speech. When you are told that you must use pronouns, it's like when your parents tell you to do something, you immediately don't want to do it, you want to do it less.
Just because they said so.
Just because they said so. I have friends who are gender binary, who are non-gender binary. I have no problem using they, them, or not using he, she. When you're told that you need, or you must, or else you'll be persecuted, it's very hard for you to bring yourself to the sort of warmth to do it. You will do it out of protest. You will do it biting your teeth. You will do it with a lump in your throat, and you won't enjoy it. And then even the tone that you use it in can be interpreted as hate. Oh, he was aggressive using my pronouns. That could be interpreted that way.
Like, it just sounds like hateful if I'm like, Zer.
everything,
Like,
everything's
oh my god, you're a bigot,
believe-
you're the worst thing on the planet.
You better
like,
believe that's exactly how I would be saying it.
Yeah.
Zer.
To
Just reminds me of Toy Story, actually. Remember Zurg or whatever? The guy with the gun?
to have my, Showly reference to Donald Trump. Donald Trump Jr., his pinned tweet is liberals love the First Amendment, which is free speech, until you say something they don't like.
That's a good point.
You know,
It's a great point.
the left will immediately call out Trump for being a bigot and a racist and whatever, and then if you read the full context of what he said his speech in, it's not so bad. He's kind of a jerk and kind of an a-hole at times, but it's not like when the whole thing came out. Sorry, I'm almost done.
That's okay.
When the whole thing came
I was
out,
gonna bring it up anyway.
when the whole thing came out that Donald Trump says veterans with PTSD are weak. If you read what he said, the context in was that those that come back with PTSD could not handle the time in combat, and they come back damaged, and we need to aid those damaged veterans.
Yeah, he said like it was more like they've been weakened.
They've been weakened by the combat,
Which-
and that's not right. That's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, yeah, you can't argue with that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just what you're saying with like the whole like new like social media wave.
Yeah.
How no matter what you say, somebody can reinterpret it into their own thing, into whatever they want.
Like if you ever
That's
want
exactly
to watch
what they did there.
YouTube bloggers and they're like, a McDonald's worker attacked me. Watch now. And then you watch their entire 20-minute blog and it was just an aggressive way they said hi. It's clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to read these articles. They want you to get, absorbed in the data. And, with this, what comes now? How politically correct can we get? There are places that you can't even say happy holidays anymore. What I've been through the school system.
So what would you say then?
You would say like enjoy your break. You can't
Yeah.
even say
Enjoy,
happy
like have a
holidays.
great winter break.
Have a great winter break.
Everybody's just so offended at
Yeah.
everything. Professional offense taking is now a thing. And you know what? Like, I'm Jewish. You say Merry Christmas to me? Okay. Happy Hanukkah to you.
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem?
What's the problem?
They're just
Like-
expressing, they're
When they say that,
spreading their happiness.
it's a
to
term
you.
of it's a term of endearment,
Yeah,
right? You
were
wish well upon somebody.
We were in the school system. I used to go to my school gym and do carols.
Mhm.
My mother is Jewish. My dad is Catholic. They're both secular. I love Christmas carols.
Mhm.
They used to call it the Christmas break. They stopped that. They stopped the
Yeah.
caroling. They used to call it the holiday break. They stopped that. Then they started calling it the winter
What
break.
school did you go to? Did you go to like public school or
Yeah,
Catholic school?
public school.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I think that'd be even
you
worse.
went to a Catholic
I
school.
went to Catholic.
No, I went to Catholic school too. I think that would be even worse if you go to a Catholic school and then because like there's some students that aren't like Catholic or like technically aren't Catholic that you would be forced not to use Christmas. I'm like
I went to
that's
a
a
public
major
school.
part of
I
the
would-
religion. You know?
I would sit with my friends in the gym, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, you name it, and we'd always wait for, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and then we'd add our little stupid parts in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah.
He had a very shiny nose, like a light bulb. And then we would fall on the floor laughing,
Yeah.
and that was fun for us. And then they stopped that, and we were upset. Like this is the birth of politically correct culture. This is what we've come to.
Oh, I liked
That was
that,
a-
Adam. That was great.
That was
Yeah.
really good.
Direct
I
quote.
talked
You heard it here
for a very
first.
long time.
No,
You
no,
heard
no.
it here first on the Rabbin Report.
Now, I guess maybe we should go on to the next question.
I
suppose.
I just wanted to add, like, as you were saying, everybody's offended at anything, and I did want to point this out. People could be offended by your shirt. I'm
Yeah.
not. I just wanted to point your
okay,
shirt out,
for
honestly.
those who are watching on Spirit
I didn't
Live,
know that.
I've got a half-naked George Costanza
Here,
on
move
my
back
shirt.
a bit. I'll let the camera zoom in on you. So the
If
little
nobody
more.
knows Joe Costanza, it's the guy from
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Seinfeld,
the
right?
guy from Seinfeld.
Yeah,
I have a
let me zoom
half-naked
in.
George
Little-
Costanza on my
move a little
shirt.
more back.
Back?
Back.
Back.
Yeah,
There you go, you go.
Okay.
Now it just looks naked because you're blocking
Yeah.
off his
you're
Okay,
blocking
okay.
us. There we
How's
go.
The timeless
There
art
we
of
go.
seduction.
Now
People
that's
would-
seduction.
People will
Raise
get
your hand if you're
mad.
seduced right now.
People
Oh.
would get mad at this shirt. Like,
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
classy. I think it's classy.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, so I just want to point that shirt
Somebody
out,
would get
related
offended by that
somehow.
shirt.
Yeah.
Some-
oh yeah. Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
will be offended by the fact that I zoomed into that shirt. Like,
Yeah.
this is how bad it is. In all honesty, it might sound funny, but this is where we're coming to. So, my last question that I had written down, but we can go further than that. What is next? What's next after Bill C-16? You, Marshall and Adam, you've said that free speech has been dead for a long time. So, with Bill C-16, changing that as well, what's coming next? What can we see from the government? What can we see from these communities? What's happening to political correctness? What's happening in general? What's happening? What's going to happen?
I'll fully admit this is a slippery slope fallacy. I'm not trying to say this is what's going to happen next. All I'm trying to say is I would not be surprised if this was next. I don't know. I feel like Adam, you've probably seen it. The New York Times article that was kind of like in defense of pedophilia.
I heard about it.
Yeah.
I didn't read it.
Not necessarily
New York
defending like child molesters, more defending people who are attracted
Oh no,
to
wait!
children.
I did see it. Yeah,
Yeah, it was-
Oh god.
Defending people who are attracted to children but don't act on it. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
yeah.
you
They had
know?
a few. They had an interview of a guy.
Is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
pedophilia a disorder, not a crime? Is that
yeah. That's it.
Okay, cool. I just pulled
Is that
it
New
up.
York Times?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
So
I just like Googled New York Times pedophilia. That's why.
you know, it does
You might want
raise.
to wipe your search history there. Just saying.
It does raise an interesting point, I suppose, because like really, like, do you think pedophiles can help being attracted to children? I don't know. Probably not, honestly, but it's not something that should ever be defended. Just imagine like we have legislation coming in saying like, yeah, you can't call somebody a child molester anymore. They are a you have to refer to them by their proper pronoun of pedophile self.
Or something like that.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that's what's next. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's next.
Okay. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you know, created by our Lord and Savior Pierre Trudeau, came into effect, and the first two acts or first two stands. I know what, whatever. The first two parts of the charter are basically for part number one, freedom of expression. Number two, limits to freedom of expression. Those are the first two parts of the charter. We've seen this in terms of I don't know if you guys do you guys take law in high school?
Nope.
No, I didn't.
Anyway,
I dropped it out of the class because it was too boring.
I don't know if you guys learned about the Keekster case.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
with the teacher.
Yeah. There was a professor in Alberta that decided to teach his students that the Holocaust never existed and it's a conspiracy
Oh,
created by the Jewish
I've seen
people to take over the world.
This wasn't even a professor. This is like a
A high school teacher.
Yeah.
And he would tell his students that if they did not put his words on the test, they'd fail. If they did not use his lessons for their
That's
tests, they would fail.
ridiculous. That's crazy.
So he went to court. So he was sued, obviously, for denying the Holocaust. He went to court, and he was like, "Hey, this is my freedom of expression." And they were like, "Buddy, you cannot deny the Holocaust. Like, this is a limit to freedom of expression. Like, how far can you take this?" And I completely agree with that. What could happen now is that, you know, we've seen this, and I don't mean to generalize, but we've seen this in a lot of the alt-right and far-right groups. We've seen a 57% increase in Muslim hate crime in the States. We've seen spray paint on people's cars saying, you know, F you, N-word, whatever. We've seen hate crime increase, and you cannot deny that since the election, hate crime has increased. What could happen now is that, you know, transphobic people could come out and be like, "Hey, you know what? I'm not using your pronouns. Sue me." And then they could use this, and then a whole kerfuffle could start about free speech and freedom of expression, and then we're at a standstill, one step forward, two steps back, in terms of the acceptance of trans folk. Now, you know, I'd like to say that I don't know what it's like. I cannot even, you know, when you hear about a child in Haiti that, you know, he doesn't have a family or he's poor, you can sort of imagine what it would be like.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense.
The difference between sympathy and empathy, yeah.
I cannot imagine to have gender dysphoria. I cannot even begin the steps to put myself in a place that I feel as if though I cannot identify with the gender that was assumed on me at birth. I am a boy. I will always be a boy. And that's how I feel. I do not know what it's like to be trapped. I do not know what it is like to feel, you know, uncomfortable in my own skin. I cannot get there. I don't even know where to start. If a pronoun, if starting to be called by, you know, a different pronoun, if that can make you feel comfortable in your own skin, I will call you whatever the hell you want me to call you. Because I'm, like, think about it this way. A lot of children of abused parents, if they're forward thinking, or if they're, you know, if they want to change what happened to them, a big step for them is to start using their mother's maiden name. It's happened in the past. And they get very upset when they're referred to, when they're used with their father's surname.
And that's very understandable, I get that.
And that's very understandable. When the non-gender binary folk and the trans folk, if you can't use their pronouns, And if you're too stubborn to use their pronouns, then you're the problem. I get it. Some of the pronouns sound a little ridiculous. And I know that there are cases where these people use these pronouns out of spite. I can't deny that there will be cases. But you cannot tell someone that they do not identify with what they say they identify with. Gender, for a big part, is a social construct. And we've now, with the sort of creeping, slowly, water droplet dripping tap acceptance of the LGBTQ plus population, we've opened up the conversation as to, hey, it isn't just boy and girl. It's more than that. And I think that we need to work out the kinks of what is more. What is the limit to more? How far can you go? Can I put on a wig and go somewhere and say I identify as a woman?
Well, actually,
that's been done. I know it's been done.
We discussed this last week, I think. Yeah.
Like, there was one guy, I went to the rack, it's the gym at Ryerson, and they have women-only hours.
Yeah.
And they kicked us out at 2 o'clock, and I was completely cool with it. No, you want to work out with women, do your thing. But one guy was sitting there, and he was pissed, and he's like, what if I identify as a woman? And the people kicking him out couldn't say anything.
Yeah, right now the problem is that it's a loophole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
people could do that and stuff like that.
That's a good phrasing for it.
I know
that's Bill C-16 for you.
Yeah.
Like they can't kick him out.
They can't kick him out. And what will happen to the people that actually identify with gender dysphoria?
Mm-hmm.
What about the people that actually have gender dysphoria?
Yeah, it doesn't solve the problem whatsoever. Yeah.
Like, I could walk in and be like, you know what? I'm a woman too.
Mm-hmm.
I identify. I have a wig. I have makeup on. I'm a woman too.
Not even technically, just
how you. Yeah, I don't even have to. I can say I'm androgynous.
I'm not saying I'm gonna do it. I'm just saying I've as a hypothetical theory.
Yeah.
How. If we look into the washrooms, they have the signs this is not just the men's washroom, it's a trans or anybody who identifies.
Anybody, yeah, exactly. That's a very
yeah.
I haven't been in the girls' washroom, but they have the same sign there, right? Exactly.
As this can use this space.
So me right now with my physical appearance right now, I could technically go into the women's washroom. Like, let's say for some reason the boys' washroom's completely occupied and there's a big ass line, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go in there.
And look at us. We're three cis men sitting here and ridiculing the gender pronouns because this could happen in a sense.
And here,
I'm not saying it should happen, but that's the problem with our system right now.
And we're not making fun of it, but we're saying we're talking about the hypothetical scenario.
And
it's happened. These scenarios have happened.
I'm big on the right to ridicule. I don't think being an asshole should be illegal. I think you should be. I think
Donald Trump did get elected after all.
The right to be an asshole, I think, is one of the most important rights. When it comes to things like that, what we were saying before, doesn't it really just come down to a lot more specific individual things, gender identity? Doesn't it just come down to really what does it mean for somebody who is born male to identify as female or identify as Helios gender or that's a thing.
That is a thing.
What does that mean? What implications does that have? Isn't that just kind of a combination of the way you act, your fashion choice?
See, that's the thing with the social construct. I've watched the capitalist market create everything from A to Z for girls.
Yeah.
Lego for girls, Nerf guns for girls, Kinder eggs, freaking Kinder eggs for girls.
And I love that. Kinder eggs are awesome.
And Kinder eggs are cool.
They are though.
Yeah.
Point that out.
And justice for Kinder eggs. Now, what does it mean to be a boy? What does it mean to be a girl? Now there's been an acceptance. I volunteered at a camp 2 years ago. There was a kid that came in with painted nails. And we were like, cool.
Who cares?
Nice nails.
I think
Who cares?
I think the most important part is for acceptance and stuff like that. For me, me personally, sometimes I'll fuck my Alvarez and stuff like that. And, my mom won't like it because you're behaving like a woman.
Yeah, that's feminine.
Why? If I want to just take care of myself, I guess, or if I just want to I'm sorry, I don't want a goddamn unibrow.
I exfoliate my skin. Does that make me feminine?
I go to Lush and I have these different stuff and I scrub it and
those Lush
and my skin
are great.
And my skin feels amazing.
Exactly.
Why the hell does it matter that
I use women's shampoo?
Why does it matter?
My hair's soft as hell.
Why does it matter that it's because it's marketed to girls? I can't use those products and stuff like that.
That's exactly what I'm saying because that does not. You guys do not identify as a woman. You guys don't identify as anything other than male. I'm assuming here.
I'm a straight whitewashed
I'm
male
a straight white
Marshall,
man.
did you just assume?
that like
I
that
apologize.
that like likes to like take care of my eyebrows, that
Yeah.
likes to like clean my face. That's it.
That's exactly my point. I understand the whole gender dysphoria thing, but like let's talk non-binary
I apologize
here.
for the yelling.
Let's
That's
say
okay. That was good. That's good quality content.
if we're talking non-binary situations, let's say you're born a male, so, like you're biologically male, and you don't like to dress as a male all the time. Sometimes you like to dress as like a
Crossdresser.
traditionally female way. You like to paint your
I
nails.
have the
And
perfect
then
example for that.
Other days you like to dress as like a traditional male. Do you really need to create a whole like other word for it that has its own laws applied to it? I think that's just your fashion choices, really. That's like, are we legislating laws on fashion now? Like, am I not allowed to tell somebody I don't like their leopard print hat or something? Like,
And I think- yeah.
it just seems so unnecessary for me. It seems so gratuitous to have legislation to have all these identities like Helios gender. Why? Like, you know what that is? That's gender. That's
Identifying with the sun or something like that.
yeah. It's like identifying with the sun. Like,
Alright.
if I refuse
I'm
to
part
call you
sun.
like sun self or like that's Helios bike. Like it really bothers me.
It's frustrating.
Like, I'm happy that this is the problem in Canada, because in the States they're having a whole debate now whether or not trans people can use the bathroom they identify with.
And I think it's unnecessary because Donald
Trans
Trump made a
people-
great point.
Yeah,
Trans people have been using the bathroom that they've wanted to use for years.
yeah.
Like, why introduce new laws now?
Just
Yeah,
because
like,
now
at
that the
the
government's
tri-
talking about it, it makes it a big issue.
Like Caitlyn Jenner supported Ted Cruz at the beginning of the primaries, but then when he made his comments about the trans folk, she switched to Trump, and she went to the Trump Tower and took a piss in the female bathroom and was like, "Hey, cool." There was no sign in the female bathroom that says trans people can use
Yeah.
this bathroom.
It's just like,
But
See,
Donald
I-
Trump, it's like, go take a piss wherever you want.
Another like problem with like the
as long as
pronouns.
it's not on the floor.
Yeah, as long as it's not, in a toilet, but whatever toilet you prefer.
Like, another issue with the pronouns and stuff like that. Like, let's say like maybe we're compelled to use like Z's or whatever, right? But if someone who's like transgender and says like, "Oh, identify as a male" and stuff like that, and just they're transgender, if you want me to, if you like biology originally began as a boy and you transitioned into a girl or as a man to a woman, and you want me to use her, but you technically like were a boy from the beginning, I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's all about acceptance and
If
stuff
that
like
makes
that.
you feel comfortable, I'll call you whatever you want.
I feel like I feel like just because you're transgender shouldn't mean you'd be
Yeah.
compelled to use these brand new pronouns.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with using the original pronouns that we have right now.
Yeah,
Him and her are perfectly
and that's
acceptable.
also, like, I know that we're running out of time, but that's also another thing. The trans population doesn't necessarily identify with, the sort of, imposed pronouns on them. They can, you can call them, they don't mind if you slip and use he or she every now and then. Or they don't even need to be called he and she. It all comes down to the person. And, like, what if somebody overhears me calling, a woman that transitioned to a man her over and over again? What if they report me?
Yeah, it's a
I
problem.
remember
Yeah.
I met somebody on vacation once, and I knew they were trans. Somebody had mentioned that they were trans, and I genuinely could not tell whether they were male to female or female to male. And I did not know for the life of me what pronouns to use. I was just afraid to talk to them because of it. And I just think we place so much importance on it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We just need to be able to have an open discussion and be able to talk about it. It's like, okay, so you are, what's your name? Okay, my name's Daniel, but
Yeah.
now I'm called Danielle. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
I think
So-
the most important thing, like, sorry, I just wanted to discuss it for 1 second.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Was in terms of like the fashion and stuff like that, was like Young Thug is one of the perfect examples of being
Yeah,
able
he's
to
made
wear
more
whatever you
female
want
clothing.
and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
So we are coming up in about 30 seconds.
Acceptance is key.
And I just want to say thank you to my panel again. Thank you to all our listeners. We had a very, very good debate today.
Yeah, I'm really
And,
happy that we could talk about this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
me
too.
too.
And
Exactly.
we will have a brand new show for you next week. Maybe we'll talk about abortion. Maybe the show topic will change again. But it's good that we actually have the ability to have these types of discussions here. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.